Well, hey there, happy innovators. How y'all doing, huh? You having a good week? Getting ready for your weekend? You're gonna have some fun? I hope so. So, what did you think of that last podcast? You know, the tail end of it with that Thumper Incorporated song I played? It's pretty weird, huh? It's really weird for me to listen to it now, you know, and especially on vinyl. You know, it's such a strange thing to remember, you know, like, oh, that's right, I did that, didn't I? I made a record, actual vinyl record. You know, my wife and I have talked about it, you know, doing the same kind of thing for pipe choir. So, you know, maybe, you know, who knows, maybe somewhere down the line, you know, I'll pick a couple songs, maybe 4 songs of mine and, you know, shorter ones, obviously, and release them on 7-inch, like a collectible kind of thing, you know, maybe get in the vinyl game a little bit. Which, you know, leads me to the question, I guess, you know, I could ask you guys, whoever's listening to this podcast, if I were to make a pipe choir 7-inch on vinyl, you know, collectible record of pipe choir, what songs would you pick? If you could pick 4 songs from pipe choir to be on vinyl, what 4 songs would you pick? You can leave your answers down in the comment section if you want. And most of you probably won't. That's okay. I understand. The majority of people really just want to listen. They don't want to participate or comment or anything like that. And I understand that. So no big deal. Anyway, I can't believe what's going on in Ottawa, Canada. I'm sure by now most of you are familiar with what I'm talking about. If you're not, you're probably living under a rock, man. It's like, it is just outrageous, you know, what's going on there with these trucker protests. And, you know, I got to be honest with you, it's a little bit encouraging, you know, to see people, you know, feeling that strongly and actually, you know, not just protesting, but protesting in the proper way, you know, where it's not violent, it's not trouble, you know, it's not burning down buildings and stuff like that. It's just people that are trying to get their voices heard and, you know, they're fed up with something. And in this case, you know, I think it's COVID. The truck drivers and the people that have suffered under the yoke of these mandates for vaccinations and for masks and things like that, they are demanding that their voices be heard. That's really all they want. And oh man, it's just turned into such a thing, you know, and now their prime minister is doing this and that, and oh, it's craziness. But, you know, it is kind of cool. I you know, when I think about Canada, of course, I guess I have all the basic stereotypes in my mind that most Americans have about, you know, the Canadians are very polite and, you know, kind of mild-mannered, you know. And I guess, you know, from my personal experience, and I've had some actually, dealing with Canada, I've been up there quite a bit. I used to be in a band, as you all know, called Slow Bob. That was the name of the band. And we toured a lot. For an unsigned band, you know, a band that was doing their own thing, you know, we did manage to travel quite a bit. And a lot of that travel was up into Canada. And, you know, cities like Windsor, Ontario, and the Detroit area, you know, going across the Ambassador Bridge and all that stuff. I've done that, you know. And we used to play Windsor a lot, I remember. And one thing I can tell you about Windsor, Ontario, just from my personal experience, okay, other than the fact that one of my favorite bands is from there, a band called The Tea Party. They're definitely in my top 10 list of, you know, favorite bands or something. They're just awesome. If you haven't heard The Tea Party, the band, 3-piece band from Windsor, Ontario, if you have not heard of them or you have not heard their music, I highly recommend that you check them out. They are awesome. Okay, and let's see, they have a record called Transmission. I think that was the one that really I mean, it is like pedal to the metal. It is awesome. Awesome. Kind of like a cross between Led Zeppelin and the Doors, but with a modern twist and modern production techniques. I mean, it's just phenomenal music. You've probably heard of them. Anyway, other than the Tea Party, the women in Windsor, Ontario, okay, for some reason, I don't know what's going on there, but they were absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it was like enough for me to remember it like this many years later, like 20 or 30 years later. It's crazy to think about. It was just like every single girl that we saw in Windsor, Ontario, that was at the club or wherever we went. I might have talked about this actually in a previous podcast. I don't remember which one, but oh my gosh, they were gorgeous. I mean, it was unbelievable. 2 cities like that I've been to in my lifetime. Windsor, Ontario, obviously, and Austin, Texas. When I went to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest, it was like stunning. I mean, the women were just beautiful. I couldn't believe it. Like every single girl, every single woman that we saw was just beautiful. So that's what I remember about Windsor, Ontario. Crazy crowds that were really polite and, hospitable and welcoming to us, and the beautiful girls that they had there. I don't know what's in the water or what. I don't know what they're doing. But, oh my gosh, it stands out all these years later. Maybe it's changed. I don't know. I don't think so, though. But, the craziness with the truckers, huh? It's something that's really kind of maybe unprecedented. Nothing like that's ever really been done like that on that scale before, as far as I can remember. So I thought that was kind of cool, something worth talking about. And I also wanted to talk today about, there's this show that came out back in the late 90s. It was called The West Wing. I've talked about it before in podcasts previous to this, and just it's one of those TV shows that my wife and I both have binged watched so much that it's like, we know the whole series by heart. It's like I have watched every single episode of The West Wing so many times that I practically have it memorized. And it's been a while since we watched it, maybe a couple years. Like we just burned out, like you can only watch a show probably 500 times before you're like, okay, I need to change the record. I need to watch something else. But it was one of those shows where, we would start with the first episode and we would watch it all the way to the series conclusion, the final episode. And once we got on that rail, we didn't get off until the show was over, kind of thing. And that show, just as much or maybe more than any other show that I can think of, has kind of just always had the ability to resonate with me, no matter when I decide to watch it. No matter what's going on in my life, no matter what's not going on in my life, no matter where I am or who I'm with or whatever, that show, every time I watch it, it's kind of coming back to me fresh. I get a new perspective, and it's always one of these really profound kind of things. It's never really small, it probably doesn't make much sense to people who are listening to this podcast, but I'll try to explain it all as best I can, because the show, The West Wing, written by Aaron Sorkin, who's one of the greatest writers of all time. I mean, this guy is so good at writing, and trust me, being somebody who's, literally memorized, the entire series of The West Wing, okay, he is a great writer. Okay, I mean, really next level. And the premise of the show is like the story of really basically this president, Jed Bartlet, okay, a fictional character, a Democrat who has been elected. He's from New England, New Hampshire, which I can relate to. I know quite a bit about New Hampshire now, living so close to it and everything. And I can appreciate that, that kind of character that they're trying to portray. And even though he's a Democratic president, being portrayed in the series, it's not really about him being like a Democrat, okay? It's really about him being an American. And who happens to be Democrat, he happens to be president, but he's a very conservative Democrat. So, a lot of his points of view, a lot of his opinions and things that are portrayed in the show through this writing, and these characters, is really kind of neutral, And for somebody like me who, used to be a staunch Democrat when I was younger, kind of drifted more towards the middle now. So I would consider myself like libertarian. I'm not really Republican and I'm not really Democrat, but I can appreciate, the sentiment of this show. Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, yes, it's fiction. Yes, it's not real. And sometimes, often, it's not very realistic. Okay? A lot of the time on this show, it's like idealized. It's like, like I always say to my wife, that show is so good, okay? But it's not really true. But it's like what we wish the world was like. It's a portrayal of an attitude and a world, especially a political world, okay, that we wish existed, okay? And we are willing to do our part to try to usher that kind of thing into the world, especially into American politics. And, maybe just like a week ago, my wife decided that she wanted to start watching the series again. And like I said to you earlier, it's like we put the first one on, the first episode, and we go all the way through. I think it's like 7 seasons, and it's a lot of stuff. But I guarantee you that if you take the time, you can get past some of the talking and stuff that's a little bit monotonous at first to most people. If you can really sit down and absorb not just the humor and the characters and things like that, and the set design and the lighting and the music and the themes that come with each episode, but it's like the minutia, like in the deeper message that's behind that kind of show. I can't talk about it enough. I won't talk about it too much. At least I'll try not to. But I was watching the show again for the first time, like I said, in like a while. It's been a while. And so, it came back to me. The first episode starts, and oh yeah, I remember this. Oh, this is great. Oh, this scene is great. Oh, totally. Oh, it's so funny. Oh my God. All these things, And I thought, you know what? I'm going to talk about this in the podcast next time. Not because of the politics necessarily, but more about that idea of, something that is idealized, like the desire, how would I say it? Okay, like the inner desire I have for that kind of world. They say art imitates life, and life imitates art, vice versa. And I would say that's true. I would say a lot of the times that's true. And in this case, with this show, The West Wing, watching it now, through the lens of the past, maybe 3 years of American politics. I realize more now watching the show this time, okay, with fresh eyes. It's coming into my brain again. I'm watching it, I'm absorbing it one more time, right? But like I said, each time it's like a little bit different, and I get a slightly different message each time. And this time, I gotta tell you, I feel almost a sense of sadness, okay? Because of how far away we have come from that kind of spirit in America. Like the Democratic Party that I used to love has drifted so far away from the ideas that are portrayed on this show about a Democratic president. And it's a very Democratic themed story, don't get me wrong, okay? It is, and that's okay, because I don't mind that, I don't mind that someone has a different point of view. That's never bothered me. In fact, who the hell wants to hang out or, pay attention to people that only agree with you? It's stupid. Like, it's so pleasant, I guess, to a certain degree, but kind of a waste of time. It's good to hear different opinions. It's good to see and kind of empathize with different points of view. And this show, this TV show, this fictional, whatever you want to call it, okay, this metaphor for reality, is so powerful sometimes. And the messages that are being sent through this dialogue that they're having on the show. It's just a show, but, there's some truth in there. And there's some things to think about. I highly, highly recommend to all my happy innovators, man. If you have the time and the inclination, like, sit down with some of those shows, some of those episodes of The West Wing, and watch them, and really kind of get to the meat and potatoes of what they're talking about. Not necessarily what they're portraying in the show and through their acting or whatever, and not even really always through their dialogue, but the larger story that they're telling, like the larger message. There's all these micro messages, throughout these shows, but above that, there is a meta message, usually, with this show. And each one of them is like, a moral kind of theme or a moral question that not even just Americans should be asking themselves. It's like the universal questions. But it's all done, okay, it's all done through this kind of spirit of respect for my country that I love, America, and our history, for better or for worse. It's like what we are. It's what we were, it's what we are, and a part of what we're going to become. You can't totally separate yourself from the past. Not all the time, anyway. And I like that. I like tradition. I do. Have you ever been, if you live in America and you're listening to this podcast, have you ever been to the tomb of the unknown soldier in Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C.? Have you ever been there and watched the changing of the guard? If you haven't, I highly recommend you at least, type it into YouTube or something and watch a video of it, But if you have been there, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. you know? And there's no way you can be in that kind of environment, even just as a spectator, no matter where you're from, and not feel that spirit that's there, like the American spirit, when you are at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and you're watching these guys, these military dudes that are doing what they do, and it is like clockwork, man. They are like down to the most minute detail, absolutely, perfection, in executing the rudiments of the changing of the guard. It's like down to the most finite detail. It is absolutely perfect, solemn, serious, and I gotta tell you, that same kind of spirit, okay, it lives in a show, like the writing and the dialogue and the themes, okay, of this show, The West Wing. And I would imagine that a lot of you have probably heard of the show. You might even think it's boring. I gotta tell you, I used to think so too. I was bored out of my skull watching that show. It was like, when I first watched it, it was so dumb. I was like, this is just boring, But my wife made me watch it, and kind of like, what would be the word? She kind of like walked me through it. And just over time, I took the time to really pay attention and listen. And of course, like I said, after watching it a few thousand times, you kind of, an idiot like me anyway, can like absorb, the larger themes. It took me a long time, but I got there. And once that kind of started to unravel for me, it really kind of started to affect the way I thought about politics, and the way I thought about my country, and the way I thought about my fellow countrymen, and how I felt about other countries in the world. There is so much territory that is covered on that show, The West Wing. I mean, they hit so many things, that are so fundamental and like important questions or important pieces of information, about this country that I live in, and our history even, and just the process, how things are done, at that level of government. And yeah, there's, goodies and baddies, there's going to be idiots and there's going to be geniuses at that level, It's the same pretty much with everything else. There's always going to be somebody who's brilliant. And I don't know about you, but have you ever been around somebody who's brilliant? I maybe have been a couple of times in my life. They're hard to find. Brilliant people are like treasures. When you meet one, cling to them. What they do and how they think and, where they go. Like, pay attention. They're smart. They're brilliant. And, if you're like me, not brilliant, it's always great to pay attention to somebody who is. And, like I said, even though the characters in this show are fictional, okay, some of them are written as brilliant. And then you just know that it has to be that way. Like, if you get to that level, if you're a person who can get to that level of government, especially if you're not elected, you worked your way up to the top of whatever it is you are. They have a couple of characters on there like that. There's this character named Josh Lyman, played by Bradley Whitford on the show. And oh my gosh, it's like, yeah, it's just a fake character. It's not a real person. Okay? But it's a version of someone, or maybe a collection of people that really do exist. It's not pulled out of thin air. And you know, there are some people that are like him. He's this character that, you know, like, he has flaws. You know, he's younger, but he's brilliant. And when it comes to what he does, he knows everything. You know, he knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't always make the wisest decisions, but he knows the facts, and he knows the law, and he knows the rules, and he knows everything. So whenever somebody in the room has a question about something, or they don't know for sure, on this show, you know, they can ask him, and he knows exactly. You know, and I don't know about you, okay? But there's something about that kind of personality that I really admire. You know, I really admire, like, people who are really good at what they do. You know, I did a podcast, I think, called Par Excellence, you know, which was kind of hitting on this same kind of theme, right? Where it's like, it doesn't matter what field it is, you know, like if it's painting, you know, fine art, sculpting, football player, politician, plumber. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what they do. Okay? It matters that they're the best at what they do. I think that is so cool. You know, when you meet somebody who's doing something and they're doing it at a very high level, and they're very good at it, it's awesome. You know, it's awesome to talk, at least for me anyway. It's awesome to talk to them about it, you know, and to pick their brain and, like, listen to what they say and get their opinions about it and all that kind of stuff. It's such a rare opportunity, you know, when you meet somebody who's brilliant, when you meet somebody who might even be borderline genius. And I've met a few. I can name a few. I won't name names, but I've met a few people that were like, damn, you know, that guy is, like, good, or damn, like, that chick knows exactly what she's doing. Watch what she does with her life, or watch what he does with his life. 'Cause it's going to go somewhere. You know, it's got to go somewhere. And I just love that. I admire that. And that lives, okay, that kind of thing lives inside this character, Josh Lyman, on The West Wing. It's like he's like that, you know? And there's a handful of people like that they portray on this show that are like that. And I love it. I love it. It inspires me. You know, it makes me want to do well. And it's just a TV show. You know what I mean? I know that, but that's the great thing about art. You know, music and art and painting and all this stuff, the creative things, the humanities, you know, it's like, just a whole different kind of possibility, you know? Think about that. You know, if you decide, you, right now, the person listening to this podcast right now, okay, if you decide to do something with your life, like to pick something up and get good at it, you know, and let's say you get pretty good at it, and then, like, eventually you become great, you know, can you imagine how much fun that must be? Like, to be what? Like Tom Brady right now, you know, can you imagine how much fun it must be? How great it must be? I mean, sure, it's a burden in some ways too, but come on. You know, like, everywhere you go, people are just talking about how legendary you are. Like, oh my gosh, like, that must be just so crazy. And can you imagine having to deal with that? Like, in your brain, like, in your mind, you know, having to deal with this concept or this notion of, like, people think you're brilliant, you know? Like, oh my gosh, I pity him, really, in some ways. It's gotta suck in some ways, because he's probably like, I'm just me, you know? People think I'm something else other than I am, but I don't know, dude, you know? What was it, 6 or 7 Super Bowls, you know? Like, in a league, in a sporting team sport, that's like the most difficult to play and succeed at, and you become what? The greatest of all time? You know, it's like, and you're still young, kinda. You know, he's like only like in his 40s. He's still got a lot of years left, you know. Oh, it's just so cool. Think about that. There's a lot of greats, you know. Think about that. Like, there's some of the people that are, you know, maybe some of them have passed on, but some that had lived in like my lifetime. You know, the people that were great at what they did. You know, like at the top of their game, like Tiger Woods, you know, like golfer. Like, he is so good, you know, like beyond legendary status, you know. It just, can you imagine what life is like to be him? Would you want that life? I guess that's an even bigger question. Like, would you even want that life? Would I even want that life? It's like, nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Like, one of the things I've learned, you know, through doing what I'm doing, okay, and I've been doing this for a long time, okay? It took me a long time to, you know, get any kind of anything, okay? And one of the things that I've learned from my very, very small status and stature in the music business is that when you deal with people that are strangers, people that you don't know, sometimes it can get pretty weird, okay? It really can. And I can understand why some people really have a problem with that. And I wouldn't say that I'm one of them. I don't have a problem with it, but it can be really weird and uncomfortable sometimes when you meet people that know who you are, but you don't know who they are. You know, it's pretty weird. You know, unexpected sometimes, and a little creepy sometimes, depending on the person. But I would not want that to be part of my life. You know, like I definitely don't want that to be part of my life. And it would probably be a little bit overwhelming to be somebody like Tom Brady. Like, I wonder to myself when I see somebody like him, or anybody who has kind of, you know, risen to the top, the very top of their profession, whatever it is they chose. You know, I kind of wonder if it's like they have to learn how to deal with it. And how do you learn how to deal with it? I mean, I would love to ask, you know, somebody like Tom Brady that question. You know, how did you learn? How do you learn how to deal with fame on that level where it's like, no matter where you go in the world, you can't go anywhere in the world without bodyguards and security and people knowing who you are and wanting your autograph, and you have to have special circumstances everywhere you go. There is no real freedom from it. Can you imagine? That is how it is for somebody like Tom Brady, or somebody like Luciano Pavarotti, you know, or who else? Mick Jagger. You know, he can't go anywhere, right, without having like an entourage of people that go with him, just because he's Mick Jagger. Isn't that crazy? It makes you kind of glad that your life isn't like that, you know? Or maybe not. Maybe you're one of those people who would really want that. Me? Hell no, man. No way. No way. I'd run the other way. Can you imagine? But that's how it is. That's how it is for some people. And, you know, like I said, it harkens back to that whole West Wing thing again, you know? That idea of being what? Like a world leader? Like Martin Sheen's character, Jed Bartlet, you know, the president character on the West Wing. You know, it's, you get some insights into that kind of thing too, you know, on the show and the writing of the show. It's just so well done, okay? And, you know, I won't continue to talk about it all day long, but okay, so I've been talking about the West Wing for what, you know, 40 minutes or something, okay? And why am I talking about it? You know, why am I bringing it up today? And I really just wanted to say that this time around, like I was mentioning earlier in the podcast, watching The West Wing now, with all the stuff that's been going on for the past couple of years, it really makes me kind of sad. And shocked, actually, a little bit too, at how much has changed, over the past couple of years. And how there's like this America that I remember vividly, because it wasn't that long ago, that has so radically changed, is like so radically different from what it used to be, that it shocks me. It's shocking to me how much things have changed. And it makes me kind of hearken for a return of some kind back to the sanity of what American politics used to be, which is funny to say now, because back in the day, it seemed like there was a whole lot of crazy going on in American politics. And yeah, it seemed back in the, just a few years ago, there was a lot of crazy going on. And wow, it pales in comparison to what we're seeing now, But I do kind of have this hope and this kind of sense too, that there are a lot of people who think and feel kind of the same way that I do, that they're mourning the loss of the America that they used to know. And we've gone in the wrong direction. It took a wrong turn at Albuquerque, as Bugs Bunny used to say, right? Yeah. I wonder what the future holds. I wonder what's coming. I wonder what kind of stuff will happen, Not sure. I'm watching everything with kind of like a little bit of suspicion and kind of like a tempered kind of cynicism, I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be right. But one thing is for sure. Sometimes it feels like I'm mourning the loss of a friend. When I think about what I'm seeing now. The disappointment that comes along with all this stuff. All the things that people say and do in politics. Things that are done to people, lives that are ruined and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I just hope at some point that it stops. This whole canceling thing and all that stuff. I hope that, somebody will be the first one to say, you know what? I'm not going to hit the cancel button on somebody that said something I didn't like. It's like Bill Maher said just a couple days ago. I can't even believe I'm quoting Bill Maher, the man I used to hate, the voice of the moderate Democrat now, the voice of moderation and sanity, at least in my opinion. The answer to free speech is not less speech. The answer is more speech, and not just free speech, but free thought, and hopefully, maybe, we'll get back somehow in American politics to some semblance of respect for each other, respect for different political points of view. Again, it was so much better that way. Having had it both ways now, yeah, I think I would much rather have a nation of people that can respectfully disagree as opposed to violently disagree or something, And I'm holding out for those truckers up there in Ottawa, Canada, that they'll be able to remain peaceful. You know, they won't get tricked somehow into violence or something like that. And they won't go too far. You know, they'll stay the course and, you know, let their redress of grievances be heard. That's the point. That's the point. So, if you are listening to this podcast, you're still with me, do me a favor, you know, check out that West Wing show that I was telling you about that you may or may not be familiar with, and just really kind of, you know, sit down with it and kind of like really try to take in the sentiment and the message from each episode. I mean, it's not just one thing. It's like there's so many layers. There's so much stuff happening in every episode on so many levels. Seriously, do me a favor and check it out. Do yourself a favor and check it out. And so, folks, I'm going to leave it there for today. You know, this is Mike Bostwick from Pipe Choir Records signing off. And remember, folks, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy. Okay, happy innovators. Want to hear some music today? I figured kind of like sticking with that whole Thumper Incorporated theme, I'd share another Thumper Incorporated song with you today. It's a song called Jawbreaker that we had written for our second release, you know, on Smogvale Records. And it was unfortunately the record that we broke up while recording. That's what happened. You know, for one reason or another, you know, we started to hit some turbulence inside the band at the time we were recording this record and writing these songs, which for the most part kind of like suck. It really is not too much to be proud of. You know, it's really more just kind of like for posterity's sake. You know, I'll share it with you. It's available on Bandcamp, actually, and the interesting story behind the recordings that you'll find there under the Thumper Incorporated thing on Bandcamp is that we started to record this record at a studio called Modern Recording Studios in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was a 1-inch tape recording situation. So, you know, it was kind of like, in my experience with recording, I started out with ADAT, which was like a digital format, you know, of recording. That's the original Thumper recording that you heard. That was all recorded on a format called ADAT, okay, ADAT, I believe it was. And then we had graduated up to like 1/4-inch tape, you know, and then with this Thumper recording, we went to 1-inch tape, and then eventually with the other bands that I was in towards the later part of my live drumming career, I had graduated up to 2-inch tape, okay, which was like a really big deal to me, okay? But this recording you're about to hear was recorded on 1-inch tape, and it still came out pretty good. You know, it's not a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but while we were recording this record on 1-inch tape at Modern Recording Studios, we broke up as a band. And for whatever reason, you know, I don't remember exactly what happened. I don't. I'm kind of surprised at myself that what happened was we wound up just abandoning these recordings. And we never went back to the studio. Like, I don't even really know what happened. I can't believe I would do that, because I was kind of in charge, I think, of the band a little bit and like what was going on. And at least that's how the cookie crumbled most of the time. You know, I was usually the guy who was making the phone calls and, you know, scheduling things. You know, that's what I did. And so we had forgotten, really, almost entirely about this recording, okay, that we had done. We did, I think, like 5 songs, maybe. And so, like, all these years go by, right? This was probably back, like, in 1991 or 92, around the time that I was getting started with pipe choir. So we abandoned these tapes, we abandoned these recordings, and all these years go by, right? And then, like, just on a whim, maybe a couple years ago or a few years ago now, I typed in Thumper Incorporated. Like, I do that once in a while. I'll just Google it and see what comes up. And usually I would get that 7-inch that we released, you know, that would show up somewhere or something. But somebody from Modern Recording Studios, I guess, had found these master tapes of our recording. And I'm not even really sure what happened. Like, if the studio was being sold, or if it was being closed down and somebody was going through the tapes they had and they found this Thumper Incorporated session, or these sessions that we were doing, and they decided to mix them down, okay, a rough mix, and then release them on Bandcamp. I still don't know who did it, okay, I'm not sure, and that's not really important, really. I guess the funny thing, or the important thing, is that I was able to listen to them again. Like, I hadn't listened to these songs, I hadn't heard them in like 25 years. Something crazy like that. So what you're going to hear today is one of the songs from that session, one of the 5. Okay, it's a song called Jawbreaker, and we had written it kind of like as a show opener. That's like what we were going to be opening our shows with, or what we had been opening our shows with. And so we decided to record it, and it's absolutely horrible. I think it has some good points, some good parts, some good ideas, but overall, it's really, at least in my opinion now, it's kind of laughable. Maybe you'll think otherwise. I don't know. Everybody's different, but here you go. From, 1992 or 93 maybe? This is Thumper Incorporated, me playing drums, and it's a song called Jawbreaker. And tell me what you think in the comments, maybe. Like I said, it's nothing spectacular, but, you know, it'll give you a little bit of a snapshot of what I was doing with my time back in 1993 or 92 or something. One of those years, I'm not sure. So here we go. Thumper Incorporated, Jawbreaker. Check it out. Peace out, everybody.